Chapter 2. Their respective agendas. There were many manufacturers, both large and small, involved in the development of the armored cavalry. Only 3 of them handled products that used the descendants of the original 5 holy machines, which were the brains and energy generators of the armored cavalry. Their predecessor was a research organization under the direct control of the 5 royal families. However, when the kingdom became so large that the maintenance and management of the machines became complicated due to the conflicting interests of each party, many problems arose. For this reason, the company was separated from the royal family and made independent as a private company. Initially, there were 5 independent manufacturers: Hakusui, Suka, Kane, Enma, and Mahako. After consolidation, they were combined into 3 companies. After the merger, there were no more manufacturers in the Kao family, and they were renamed Hakusuten, Enmaten, Mahakuten. Today, the 3 companies are collectively known as the 3 Heavens, excerpt from the history of Mahakuten. There were 5 manufacturer representatives, assistants, and secretaries at a round table that was divided into 3 sections. The expressions on each person's face varied, but given the content of the meeting, the atmosphere was surprisingly optimistic. Both Swear and Kaisen have refused to hand over all their units. Is there any sign of the units being opened? So far, we haven't received any signals that indicate the units have been opened. The beautiful woman sitting next to the representative of Mahakuten answered the question. Most of the secretaries that each representative had in attendance were their personal companions, that is, their secretaries, bodyguards, and mistresses. They were all beautiful women, but the Mahakuten woman was the most strikingly good-looking of them all. In fact, the other delegates had been eyeing her, and the secretaries had noticed it, and although they didn't show it, they were in a very bad mood inside, wondering what they would do after the meeting was over. It's the same here, but I don't need to check that. I don't care how advanced their technology is, it's not something that can be opened quickly. I'm sure they're working hard to analyze it right now. Or maybe you're just realizing your own ineptitude. But how about overconfidence? The secretary said to herself. The other delegates didn't rebuke her, but rather seemed to be happy to be able to look her in the face with impunity. Needless to say, the price of the things that their own secretaries were begging for went up after that. Wahahaha, your new secretary is quite a warrior. Or are you not confident in your own technology? Either way, it's a technology that will be useless in 6 months, and if errors start appearing in less than a year, they'll come crying to us. That's true. However, the refusal to return it is not a very interesting story. Well, you'd better give him a run for his money. If they don't have money, they can't buy stuff. Even so, if you overreact, it could cause other customers to distrust us. We intend to respond normally, don't you? The other representatives looked annoyed for a moment at the words of the representative from Mahakuten, but then they quickly smiled. You're right. The other party is our daughter's age. I guess I was a little unpopular. It's a shame that you couldn't get the battle data from the duel. It's a shame that he lost so easily and lost his head. It's a shame. The result of this is that they've begged for replicas of the relic equipment and even prototypes under development from various manufacturers. Even though they were in the 2nd place, I don't think those people will ever be able to regain power. Especially those guys. Well, it doesn't really matter anymore. Anyway, it's a shame about the battle data, but even if we could recover it, it wouldn't be worth much. But I'm sure the other cavalry manufacturers are relieved to have prevented any damage to their reputations. In the case of royalty, they sometimes use the performance of their cavalry as an excuse for losing. But there was nothing you could do about it if you lost before you could use that excuse. A young woman, and she's only 1 pilot, and they couldn't do a thing. But if the next generation of leaders are in such a bad shape, I am not sure if they will be able to deal with the pirates. If that's the case, isn't it even more urgent that we strengthen our armored riders? The statement of the Secretary of Mahakuten was the biggest concern that they had for this meeting. You're a secretary, you should know your place. Mahakuten, even as a secretary, you must take responsibility for your words. The 2 chairmen expressed their annoyance, but inwardly they were pleased with Secretary Mahakuten's roundabout remark. I guess it's too early to put this out there. Although her expression did not change, she clenched her fists in a position where others could not see. What she said could be used as an excuse to force the Mahakuten to spend heavily. Now, if it's imperative that we reinforce the armored cavalry, what are your plans? It's always a good idea to get back what was taken from you in a duel. The first thing you need to do is to collect data on that godly knight, or sacred mechalord, I think it's called. We'll need to gather data on that as soon as possible. What exactly are you going to do about it? If we don't have enough combat data, we can work towards increasing it. But after that, the only ones who challenged her were second-rate fighters. If they only had a sense of honor, wouldn't it be the same as before? I'll provide you with 2 new Heavenly Knight class units that we plan to roll out next year. Because when it comes to granting Heavenly Knight class units, there will be many who will jump at the chance. The representatives of the 2 companies were satisfied with the proposal from Mahakuten. Along with that, I'd like to announce a new system, if you don't mind. It's too early to tell. Normally, the announcement of a new system was the centerpiece of the year's revenue and subsequent operation and development costs. But if the announcement was made too early, it could hinder the development of the new system, and the company wanted to secure its budget in small increments. What do you want? We'll be enhancing the data logger and adding a constant data transfer system. And I'd like to use this as an opportunity to introduce a new ranking system. Huh? That's bold. One is to collect the Galactic Federation's Godly Knights data, but what is the purpose of the other? The rankings are just for fun, but they do have a certain status. Even with the current ranking system, the Federation's Godly Knight should rank pretty high. In other words, the more Kiriko pushed away from the top ranks, the more people would fall in the rankings. Huh? That sounds like a story that would work for a knight with a title. It might be a good idea to draw out the reluctant ones who are taking a wait-and-see approach. All right. I have no objection. Same here. Well, I guess it's time to call it a night. No objection. When they all agreed, the whole scene disappeared. All that was left were the people from Mahakuten. In other words, this was the conference room of the main office of Mahakuten. All the others were images from the conference rooms of their respective headquarters. It's either money or goods, he said. He has a lot of pride for a businessman. I'm in trouble. Things equals technology. The secretary stretched out and complained in front of the representative. It was an unbecoming attitude for a secretary, but the representative didn't say anything, but rather breathed a big sigh of bewilderment. What were you going to do if you were found out, Takuma-san? How do you feel? The beautiful woman called Takuma just winked at them. Seeing this, the representative of Mahakuten looked as if the end of the world had come, and he gawked and hung his head. Hey, old man? Why are you crying? I didn't do this for my own good, you know? When I said I didn't want to be found out, my sisters and your daughters got into the act, you know. In contrast to Takuma's panic, the 3 women around him had big smiles on their faces. It's not fair. Taku-chan was also in the mood. Yes, I'm in love with the girls in the secretarial section dressed like that. You used to tease the new boys, didn't you? I've been doing a lot of acting exercises to make sure I didn't get caught. I'll admit it's been a little more fun, though, because it's caught on surprisingly easily. It seemed that they couldn't compete with the secretary's daughters who were all confronting them at once, and the way they quickly made excuses, it seemed like they were an older sister and a younger brother. Either way, he was superior in position, but he certainly seemed to be the weakest mentally. I never thought Taku-chan would look this good in makeup. But come to think of it, Taku-chan is a member of Shinji-asama's family, right? That's what it looks like when you wear makeup like this. Ha 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 ha, but the old man found out at once. Sorry. Back to work. When Takuma saw the resentful look on the representative's face, he quickly broke off the conversation. The secretaries, who were called sisters, were not happy, but they were afraid that if they continued to joke around any longer, the mother of the sisters, the wife of the representative of the secretarial section, might come over. Of course, the older sisters would not get off scot-free, but if the bureaucrat saw him dressed as a woman, Takuma knew what he would be in for. The old lady is going to act in a ridiculously oblique way. I had no idea that Takuma wanted to be a woman. I'm sorry I didn't recognize your mind. Yes, I know. I know. Please leave this to the old woman. I'm sure it's Takuma's son or Takuma's daughter. I will find a suitable groom for you, Takuma-sama, they might say. And do it immediately. With a creepy feeling of discomfort in his ass, Takuma cleared his throat and began to speak. He was in on the joke with his sisters and the others, but he wasn't going to go on from there. He liked women properly. Honestly, I know what you mean, old man. To be sure, I understand where you're coming from, and the outcome of this meeting will definitely be a stain on my record. But I think it's a problem if we can't move forward. However, I think this is a completely brave thing to do. This is my hunch, but I think the main unit has already been opened, and that's why they're refusing to hand it over. What the hell? The other companies will basically take a cooperative approach with each other, but when they see the level of technology, they will become competitive. There is a high probability that each will try to outdo the others and use force behind the scenes. Isn't that what the old man was thinking? If we can make a major breakthrough with any of our technologies, we can't afford to fall behind, but we've given them the slip. That's what our company is all about. If we're going to negotiate, we should treat our best customers like they're our best customers. But then what? I'm going to have to use force to turn all the executives against you, okay? Anyone who disagrees will have to go to and work behind the scenes to get it done. That's what the huge budget is for. In other words, he was willing to assassinate or purge. If you do that, Takuma-sama will. The representative of Mahakuten was shushed by the terrifyingly cold eyes. It was similar to Jai-Kiran's intimidation. Of course, it was nowhere near that level, but it was still powerful enough to silence him. I've never been to a CEO meeting before, and I'm appalled by the stupidity of your people. It made me want to vomit to think that the people there, including me, were wasting half the company's annual budget. Takuma's budget was being used to pay huge executive salaries, privately divert money to secretaries under the guise of personnel training, and to find material to attack other companies, so any sane person would certainly agree with him. Of course, it was also true that most of them would indulge in that nectar if they were in that position. Anyway, it is better to get in touch with Masaki Kiriko immediately. If they won't return the main unit, we can just go out there and check for any abnormalities instead of doing maintenance. If that's allowed, deactivate the malfunction program. Is that? Okay. If it had been opened, we'd know about it. Anyway, I'm sure the other side has special feelings for the tree. That can be seen from the records of the negotiations that led to the duel in the first place. I've always wondered. The trees are topped by the primordial 5 holy machines, and the higher up you go, the more amazing their abilities become. If that's the case, then what kind of beings were above the primordial ones? The existence of a parent tree of the 5 holy machines was expected. And some scholars say that there is a kind of clear will in that tree. I agree with that theory. So, how does she interact with it? Worship? Is it more like a family member? Either way, if the unit has been opened, she's not going to have a good impression of how we treat it. But judging from their reaction at this stage, I don't think they will dare to antagonize us either. If that's the case, then sure is tricky. I don't think you need to dare bow to the way we treat them, but you should keep that in mind when you act. You're going to have a hard time convincing the brass. Forced removal through coercion and underhanded force. The reason why Takuma had to do it was still not clear to Representative Mahakuten. Hey old man, what do you think Shinjia was doing when she was in the Galactic Federation? What is? The way she's been acting since she came back here, she seems pretty quiet. Considering that, I have a bad feeling about this. Shinju's horror was known to all because they were related to her. Their madness, their genius to drive people to ruin, their plague, and their abilities were similar to those of Widow. That's why the main planet of Magioku was not the capital. That place was a prison to isolate their crazy leader. If that princess is completely Shinji's subordinate, you don't get that impression yet, do you? If that's the case, just the fact that we've been able to work together for several years without incident doesn't seem normal. To be honest, I don't even want to be involved. That's for sure. I'm sorry I was so careless. To be honest, until then, Representative Mahakuten had underestimated Kiriko as a little girl. Of course, the power she had shown in the duel had been tremendous, but he had thought that it was only the performance of the armored cavalry, and that all he had to do was get it. However, he had caught a glimpse of Kiriko's intimidation in the video. It hadn't been clear to him from the video, but now that Takuma had pointed it out, he realized what it meant and how scary it was. And now that he realized that Kiriko had the same kind of scent as Jaikurin, he felt that he should not underestimate her. I've seen Shinju At this point, Takuma took a deep breath to calm himself down. I will have to see you, but before I do, I would like to meet with either Sansui-sama, Ratsuka-sama, or Jitsuki-sama. Are you thinking of forming a party with those people? I turned it down. It's not in my nature, and I don't want any trouble. The reason I want to see Sansui-sama and the others is because they're the only ones who have met Shinji-sama in person. I have a feeling they have something important to tell me. The report came through Tsujisa-sama's subordinate, didn't it? Oh, of course I looked it over, but it's pretty contrived. It's a bit bland, and the content seems to be quite biased. Then wouldn't it be natural to meet the source of the information, Sansui-sama? As Sansui and the others had predicted at the time, they didn't want to be looked down upon by the higher-ups, so they deleted a lot of information and sent a report that was tailored to suit their needs. After that, Jiki and his men suffered a rather ignominious defeat, and most of their subordinates, fearing a purge, defected to Reisepshi, so the truth remained in the dark. We'll make arrangements as soon as possible. And last but not least, Yamada Sena, who went missing in the duel. Please be extra careful with him. Yamada Sena-sama, is it? Not the godly knight. You know what? This is really important to keep in mind. We tend to get caught up in our thinking about the trees. Wouldn't it be scary if they had a definite will? Think about what it means for Yamada Sena-sama to be a master. It's a terrible thing to treat that tremendous power, that high computing power, so insensitively, without considering the possibility that it could be directed at us. Sure it is, but... And he himself is the man chosen to be its master. It's worth noting. Is that another one of Takuma-sama's hunches? Oh, I'm curious about him. Takuma muttered to himself as he stared off into the distance. Oh, no. Takuma's appearance and pensive expression while dressed as a woman. The representative recognized exactly what Takuma intended to do, but the three sisters and secretaries were all lost in their own suspicious, rotten fantasies. They were the daughters of the old woman who had the slanted thinking that Takuma had feared. It was a meadow with colorful flowers blooming all the way to the horizon, with gentle sunlight and a pleasant breeze blowing. In the middle of the field, 5 men were sitting in a circle, enjoying food and tea packed in a cylindrical box, as if they were having a picnic. Their posture was relaxed, but not sloppy. They looked noble and elegant. It's an interesting situation. There was gentle laughter from Ichiki Tenma Kahaku. Those idiots are such a disgrace. Grumpily eating his food was Ichika Rengoku Kaisen, a monk-like figure, who was Shuren's father. I'm not sure what you're talking about, he said. He's the first to protect the squire's family, so he's still taking good care of them. But why don't you turn that kindness toward your brothers and sisters? The one drinking tea and chuckling was Shuren Luge Kao. He was a cousin of Sauren. That's good. It's good medicine for them. Well, as long as those overprotective matrons are attached to them. But they were pretty good dewdrops, so I wish they would have tried a little harder. The one who smilingly spit out his venom was Shuichi Kenma Magioku. Dewdrops? You're a pretty bad guy, too. I'm grateful and I'm sorry to see you go. After all, you and your mother had to deal with your younger brothers and sisters in order to keep the second place. Why is it like this, Magioku? I'm a pretty little thing compared to Shinji-sama. Those who stand on top do not need to be dark. Watching their exchange silently, the leader of this party, Ishui Renka Suere, spoke gravely. It would be a good time for my brothers, who have been pushing themselves too hard. I can only hope that my younger brothers will rise to the occasion. The competition for the air is getting tougher, and Ishui is being tough on us too. So, in order to survive the intensifying competition, you still want to protect the woman who ended the political lives of her younger brothers. We welcome Yamada Sena to our party. Whoa. 3 people other than Shuichi looked at Ishui's statement in surprise. Perhaps I'm out of order. Originally, their party consisted of one person from each kingdom, so the maximum number of members was 5. If they were to include one person, it would mean that the lowest-ranking person, Shuichi, would be excluded. Nothing requires the party to have 5 members. Oh! Is that for the future? That's a pretty bold idea, but isn't it a bit premature to use it as a window to the Galactic Federation? In the first place, letting Yamada-Seina into the party is the same as breaking the tradition of the 5 families and monopolizing the contact point with the Federation. Do you think the people in the House of Lords would approve of that? At least Kao and Masui will approve. Although Kao was no longer a kingdom, the power of the old king's family, the Ren family, was still strong. With Saoren and Shuren, who was a member of this party, and one other supporter, there was a good chance that the party would be approved. Shinjia was the queen of Masui, and if Seina agreed to join the party, she was likely to support it. Of course, things were still in flux at this point, but it was not impossible. I see. But we don't know where this Yamada-Seina is, or even if he's alive. And I'm sure that his godly knight and other people with various agendas are already after him. How to outsmart them is also a problem. Let it go for a while. We'll solidify the ground while all eyes are on them. The battle, whatever it is, can't be sustained without the logistics underpinning it. That's true, but wouldn't it be bad if they could hold Yamada-Seina? We can take him away when it happens. It was Shuren and the others that brought him here in the first place. Oh, that's what you mean. Shirahana's father is an adopted son and has no party affiliation, and Shinji Adano is the current head of the family, but her political base is weak. If she were to become the leader, she would probably withdraw from the political scene at that point, and most of the heads of the Magyoku are not interested in politics. I'm sure they will appoint Shuichi as their representative. As for the competition at this stage, it's Minamo's father. It will be a long time before Yamada-Seina will have that much political value. The current leaders are ready to wait and see, and if there is going to be a problem, it will be with whom Shirahana and Minamo marry. The one who had the greatest influence over Shuren's marriage partner was her father, Ichika. In other words, whoever married Shuren was automatically declaring their support for his party. But I don't do it for political purposes. I want that girl to be with someone she really loves. I don't think you need to worry about that since she's the one who went over there with the Witch Queen in addition to Shirahana and the others, but she's been Yamada-Seina's companion for a long time, so I'm not surprised she's a fan. That kid, if he does anything indecent before marriage, I'll kill him. As long as that outstanding woman is my wife, you don't have to worry about that. Oh, I see. That one certainly looks serious. The fire, which had been raging all at once due to Shuichi's agitation, was easily extinguished by a word from Ishui. Hey, Ishui, just when I thought we were going to see more of Ichika's idiotic parenting, it gets cut short? My beloved daughter, who has finally returned home safely, is now in isolation at her grandmother's. I don't want her to get into trouble if she gets out of control. Shouldn't you be protecting Yamada-Seina? Most of the people who are looking for him are probably looking for the godly knight. There's a good chance they'll use forceful methods to get it. Few know the truth about the armored cavalry and its master. The unwary will be badly burned, and the prudent will reap the fruits. So, we're going to take the fruits of his labor? But will there be a price to pay, or will you have to take on some troublesome ties? It's trivial. What is important is what Shirahana and the others brought Yamada-Seina for. Defeating pirates, right? Yeah, you can't just focus on the immediate future if you want to achieve that. Within the Galactic Federation, Seina was the hero who was going to defeat the Demon King. But that was because it was more convenient for the Galactic Federation, or rather for Eri and Sito. In the first place, Seina's role was that of a decoy, but it was a role in which he could never play a leading role. However, in Renza, it was possible to use him as a decoy. It was a trump card for defeating pirates, but this time, instead of using the hero, it was the hero's weapon, the Holy Sword. Yamada-Seina's duel showed us that the pirates are much larger than we expected. There is no doubt that they are aiding the pirates. And it appears that the number of collaborators on the Renza side are also larger than we thought. The darkness seems deep. On the other hand, it's easy to find the enemy's logistics, isn't it? It's impossible for an individual to maintain a Heavenly Knight-class armored cavalry. If it's on a large scale, it's not impossible to trace its distribution, especially for the Aqueous Knight class and above, which were becoming more and more popular. The armored cavalry was made up of many parts that required specialized knowledge and were more complex than ships. Even if an ordinary factory could make the parts, it was impossible to assemble and adjust them. That's right. It doesn't matter how widely dispersed the pirates are, we just have to find their roots. What are the chances that it's the Galactic Federation? Considering the fact that there was a large pirate organization on the other side, it's unlikely. Of course, that doesn't mean there aren't any, so we have to be careful. However, Yamada Sena and his team will not be able to take on the pirates alone. It is necessary to gather competent armored cavalrymen. We need to gather talented people who have been driven away by the power-driven fools. I'm sure you'll be happy to know that I'm not the only one who can help you. But is that okay? You might end up with a new hero, you know. But heroes only shine in turbulent times. The important thing is what happens after that. I see. In the end, it all comes down to strengthening the ground. In the end, if the brave man does not marry the princess, he will just be a man. Good. Then let's go with that policy. They all nodded in agreement. At that moment, with the sound of an urgent call, the video monitors from each of their subordinates were activated in front of them. Boo-hoo! Everyone who saw it, including Ishui, fell down on the spot and started laughing. It was a huge, dimly lit, dome-shaped hall with a ceiling nearly 80 meters high. The extravagant decorations were faintly visible. However, the only place where people were actually present was a semicircle of about 40 meters. The ceiling and the room in front of it, without walls, seemed to stand alone in the huge dome. In the center of the room, a little to the rear of the room, there was a luxurious pavilion-style seating area made of intricately carved and intricately decorated stones. In front of the seats were wide sofa-like seats that could comfortably seat about 20 people, made of velvety cloth, embroidered with silver and gold threads, and the framework was also decorated with intricate carvings and gilding. It was large enough to hold several thousand people, but there were less than 10 people in it. There seemed to be about 4 people in the dignitary seats, but their silhouettes could not be discerned at all because of the finely woven lace. In the front seats, there were 3 people. One of them was a butler-like man, and the 2 slightly out-of-place people on the sofa seemed to be invited guests. What the audience were seeing was a video of Sena, Kariko, and the others from before the duel, projected outside the room in a huge hall. One was a young woman of high school age, with straight dark red hair, wearing a t-shirt, a long sleeveless cardigan, saggy pants that looked like hakama, and sandals. She was a beautiful and fearless girl, but she was drinking tea and eating baked goods similar to rice crackers and staring at the video with half-lidded eyes. KK? The man next to her was in his 40s, with a shaggy head and a scraggly beard, and the appearance of a wild samurai. He was dressed like a hippie from the Showa era, smiling, lying barefoot on the sofa, and eating a huge piece of cake from the table with his hands. Occasionally, he tried to wipe his cream-stained hands on the sofa, and the butler quickly offered him a wet towel. KK? Renza also used folding fans, and the nobleman was using it as a simple gesture of intention. The hands of the person in the noble seat trembled at the man's insolence, and occasionally the large fan in his hand would close with a snap. Kukuku. The sound must have reached the man's ears, but he didn't seem to mind at all, and neither did the girl next to him. How about? The butler asked fearfully as the video finished. The man poked the girl next to him on the shoulder with his bare foot. Yes, it is. This one's sword, it's definitely from the battlefield. The girl's doll-like expressionlessness remained intact, but in a cool, interested voice she began to speak. Sword of war, sir? It's not one-on-one like a duel, it's specifically for mixed or many-on-one fighting. In other words, a 4-on-1 situation is the intention of the other side. Oh, so you mean to say that this is the result of the enemy's cowardly trickery? The butler was indignant, and you could hear the fan snapping from the dignitary's seat. Even if it was a ruse by the other side, they were outnumbered and outgunned. the result of not knowing their own strength and simply relying on the advantage of numbers. The girl's face was expressionless, but out of sight of the butler, she smiled with her mouth only, as if she were making fun of them. And again, the man poked the girl as if to urge her onward. Seeing how her armored cavalry moved much better later on in the game, I'm guessing that the provocation by taking the heads and weapons was an act of familiarization training for her armored cavalry. Fuck. What shamelessness. I didn't know the Federation's countrymen were so savage. At that moment, there was the sound of a fan being beaten. The butler turned to him and bowed, and then turned to the girl again. Will you be able to defeat him? We can win. The girl answered the butler's question confidently, and the next moment, Fugga. The man next to her lightly kicked the girl, and she went straight into the wall, knocking over the artwork. The butler and the dignitaries could only stare in horror at the event and the sheer force of the crush. Father. However, the girl quickly stood up, breaking down the wall she was stuck in, and rushed over to the man. Her hair was a mess, and her clothes were covered with dust, though she would normally have been hurt quite badly. If you're going to kick me, you'd better wipe those dirty feet first. It was okay to kick. The butler and those in the dignitary's seat shouted in their minds at the same time, but the girl began to wipe the man's feet with a wet towel handed to her by the butler. How can we win, you idiot? You're not even an armored cavalry pilot. How are you going to fight? I can't lose a sword fight. Kyan. Once again, the girl was kicked in the face by the man and flew into the wall a little farther away from where she landed before. Of course, she immediately jumped up and ran back to the man. In other words, if you gave the wrong answer, you got kicked, which seemed to be the educational instructional scene of these parents and their children. How are you going to get into a fight, you idiot? They have no reason or advantage to fight you, you idiot. Then I'll force him. Kyan. Kukuku. How can a man known as the Sword Saint, the Sword King, and even the Sword Demon be afraid of a single woman? A woman's mocking voice could be heard from the dignitary seat. The man's name was Neijian Yatsura, and his daughter was Shunka. Both were well-known mercenaries. Isn't your young daughter more worthy of the name Sword King? Kusakusu, exactly, yes? You have enough guts to become an armored knight. Her tone was elegant, but her voice was happy, as if to make up for her patience. The images shown to Neijian and the others were the most humiliating images they had ever seen. They were annoyed at the way she had ridiculed them and the way she had made fun of them. You hear that, father? It's all in the eye of the beholder, Kyan. Instantly, Shunka slammed into the wall. Don't make me laugh. You don't have the will or even the power to do that anymore. You're just a bunch of third-rate frauds who are trying to fool idiots and kids with empty testimonies. The man known as the Sword Demon lay down and lightly waved his arm. Boom! A gust of wind rushed through the hall, and the butler's body was blown in half. But all that was scattered from the butler's body was yellow liquid, carbon fiber fragments, and special gel. The roar of the crowd was drowned out, but a few screams could be heard. The pillars and roof of the dignitary's seat in the back were also blown off. A moment later, about 24 hall guardians appeared with a rumbling alarm. After seeing Kiriko's battle, she had assured them that they could win the fight, and she proceeded to slash through them and throw them away with no hands. You don't have any credibility if you've been using your kid's status to repeatedly beat them up. The man quickly rose amidst the commotion and walked over to the collapsed guest of honor's table. There, 4 elderly women were huddled together, staring at Neijian. They were the mothers of the second horseman who had been defeated by Kiriko in the duel. Hold back, you bastard. You mess with us and you'll get what's coming to you. Kaka. I don't trust people who do bad things behind my back. How many Bioroids and Guardians? Know you're here. Even if they do, they won't be safe. If you can get rid of the Galactic Federation woman, you can be forgiven for your rudeness. Ha ha ha. There are a lot of people who would love to see you dead. Your family and the dueling ethics guys think you're a good scapegoat. Bullshit. The women's faces contorted. I've got a lot on my mind, he said. This is the result of me getting carried away and making too many enemies. Oh! Would your father, who was in a similar situation, say that to someone? After sending one of the guardians into the wall, Shunka butted into her father's comment. Nejian was the same way when it comes to making enemies. You can't even defend yourself, he said. Your sons are not bad, but they fall down because you make them too tall. How dare your father lecture people about disciplining their children? Is it perhaps a gag? Shunka smashed the guardian with a dumbfounded look. Even at a high level, dealing with thugs indoors or guardians was a one-sided job for her. Shut up, you brainless idiot. I'm sure everyone who has known you since you were a kid has tearfully praised you for making it this far. Anyway, your family is already working on the next one, and they don't want you to waste any more money. Nejian raised his left hand with a swoop. One flash of his hand blade, and the fate of the girls would be over. Bastard! Bastard! By your own hand! You bastard! You bastard! No! No, no! I don't want to die. Stop. Help me. Those who stared at Nejian. Those who begged for their lives. It was the pity of those who had fallen from power. I'll make it easy for you. As Nejian said this with a blank expression, a lively tune began to play in the hall. He stopped his hand, and Shunka was on the lookout for the area while smashing the last guardian. What? At that moment, the ladies in front of Nejian saw something strange. But they didn't try to run away from Nejian, nor did they try to fight back. What? My hand just did it. My body. My body. To his surprise, the girls started dancing to the tune of Tenkabushi at a lively tempo. In other words, they were hooked by the video material mentioned earlier. Boo! Nejian, who had been watching with a wary expression, suddenly burst into a fit of giggles. He couldn't take it anymore and started laughing hysterically. Wahahahaha. He fell to the floor rolling around while laughing hysterically. The man who was called the Sword Saint, the King of Swords, and the Sword Demon had a sweet tooth and a great sense of humor. Stop it. Stop it. Well, 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 sisters. It looks like you're really enjoying yourselves. After defeating all the guardians, Shunka stood next to her father who was laughing and waved to the ladies with a blank expression. Hey, little girl. Don't look at me. Don't look. Please. I forgive your rudeness. I'll give you as much money as you want. I'll get you and your father out of here. The women's faces were red with shame as they danced along to the lively music. I see. Then, since I seem to be interrupting, I'll leave you to it. Yes, yes. Hurry up and leave. Don't be shy. Get the hell out of here before we change our minds. Yes, yes, yes. Now, before we go, let's take a photo. Blinking, Shunka placed a photographic probe on her shoulder, wondering where she had gotten it from. I don't know where you got that. What are you going to do with it? Ladies, have fun dancing now? In other words, they're going to put that footage on the internet. Stop it. Stop. Stop. Stop it. Your expression is so stiff. Come on, smile and laugh more. The lines were harmonious, but the blinking faces remained expressionless. Such an embarrassment. Damn it, kill me. Kill me. Screams, shouts, and laughter echoed through the hall for a while. Please check it out. It was a place that looked like a corner of a lounge. It was only about 10 tatami mats in size, but with a comfortable sofa, ornamental plants, and indirect lighting behind the lattice-like walls, it didn't feel small. The monitor in front of Nejian and the others showed works of art and jewelry, each with a detailed history of the item and its price. In other words, this was a place like a pawn shop that dealt in luxury goods, and the items being appraised were those that had just been on display in the hall where the mother of the second group of riders was located. Naturally, taking something without permission was considered theft, but in the eyes of Nejian and company, it was a courtesy payment and a fair compensation for being called in and consulted. It was not a fireplace burglary or anything like that. All right. Half to the designated account, half to cash. All in gold beans, please. Thank you. The next moment, Nejian saw 10 cases of small coins, called gold beans, about 1 centimeter in diameter, in front of him, and a monitor showing the payment activated in front of him. If you hadn't missed them, we would have gotten 10 times as much. Shunka was referring to the jewelry that those women were wearing. Don't worry. I'm not going to kill them after seeing them like that. What are you going to do with the footage you took? I thought I'd share the fun with the world. Maybe I should have interceded. When Nejian heard this, he covered his eyes with his hands and looked up to the heavens. It was a real suicide to be seen by Nejian and the others, and to be exposed to the whole of Renza. Then they might still be dancing, so let's go back now. What an idiot. If I had posted that kind of footage, it would have been removed by now. I'm sure you're the one who's going to get in trouble. It's all right. My father and I have uploaded the file in our joint names. What the hell? Your father told me to do that whenever I did something because he wanted the advertising money, right? Crap. That was. What business is it of yours to have a grudge or two now, father? A boomerang indeed. Nejian breathed a big sigh when he saw his daughter laughing at him. It's time for you to leave me. You're strong enough to live on your own, and you have disciples to support you. You could even become an armored knight if you leave me. I'm not interested in that, and no one is crazy enough to want to take me on for all the trouble now. But if you are, you can go too. Father. As Nejian spoke somberly and seriously, Shunka's expression changed. However, he immediately glared at her with a grim look on his face. So, what are you trying to do by getting rid of me? What do you mean, I'm worried about your future? No. At times like this, you are often plotting to do something fun behind my back. If you don't tell me honestly, I'll refuse to accompany you to the Spring Sweets Festival at Armalite. Please go alone. Oh! What the hell? That's the price you pay for taking me to this job. He was unpredictable and unrestrained. Nejian may have been known as the demon of the sword, but he didn't act that way to everyone. Like most fathers, he had a strong dislike for crying children and groups of young women. It's a small price to pay for missing out on those old farts and reducing my income. I'm the one who went up against the wall to collect the money in the first place. In a case like this, I think 80% of the money should be my share, not 50-50. Damn. Oh, you cowardly. Humph. It was my father who taught me not to hesitate to use any dirty trick to achieve my goal. Nejian, who stared at her while grinding his teeth, was so powerful that a normal human being would have shat his pants if he were to come face to face with him. But Shunka was either used to it or insensitive and didn't care. However, did I tell you that? What? When she was asked that, she tilted her head and clapped her hands. Oh, that was my mother's teaching. Shunka's mother, a woman who said, if you suspect something, cut it out, and if you're wrong, run away, was a mercenary who specialized in defeating pirates. By the way, she was not married to Nejian. I told you to check with me if they taught me anything because they're dumber than you. Ha ha ha. But it seems to have helped this time. Nejian and Shunka came to a space colony connected by an orbital elevator to the satellite orbit of the planet where the hull that caused the commotion was located. The space colony also had a spaceport, which was the gateway to space, a format used on many of the planets in Renza. One of the branches of the sweet store, Armalite, that Nejian wanted to visit was located in a commercial facility there. So, would you mind telling me why you're here? Armalite was the largest sweets company in the world, with stores all over the city, and was originally opened by the royal family's pastry chefs. In addition to a common menu for all stores, each store had its own special menu, and the biggest selling point was that they were allowed to sell special sweets that were served at each royal family's dinner. There were even aristocrats and wealthy people who traveled around to eat these sweets. And of course, the main clientele here were women, with only a few men who looked like they were on dates. The rather large store was packed, and it felt like they were in the cafeteria of a women's college. Yeah, I was actually hoping to meet Yamada-sana. Nejian was happily eating the cakes lined up on the tower stand. This was the secret recipe of the Cow royal family, a menu inspired by spring, with a variety of confectionery materials crafted into flowers. Yamada-sana? I've seen the battle footage, and you don't look like you're capable of doing what your father cares about. Nejian heard the answer and silently placed one of the cakes on a small plate and offered it to Shunka. Ugh. In an instant, Shunka's complexion turned pale. She had a huge weakness for sweets, just like her father. Shunka poured all of the unsweetened tea in the pitcher and finally stuffed the cake into her mouth. Then she held her nose and tried hard not to smell the burp. Of course, The sweet smell of cake filled the air around her, but she couldn't stand the smell of it coming from inside her own stomach. But this was an educational lesson, not payback for what she had just done. You know the term probability bias too, don't you? Well, that's because, of course, most mercenaries care about good luck and bad luck. For those who engaged in battle, the element of luck, which was beyond one's control, was an object of fear. Many mercenaries were superstitious and believed in charms and jinxes. Yamada-Sena attracts pirates because of his probability bias. That's also the reason why the royal ladies who went over there brought him to Renza. Is that what it's all about? The paperwork submitted for the formation of the pirate strike force had figures on the bias of Yamada-Sena's odds. Nejian was actually quite intelligent. Due to his upbringing, he entered school quite late, and although it was all correspondence courses, he was able to complete the basic curriculum in between jobs, and eventually completed a course at a top university. You said it was pretty high? I was 8 years old when I picked up a real sword, and I slayed a living creature that very day. And at 10 I slayed a man, and at 12 I went into battle. I was about that high, but what does that have to do with anything? The most troublesome part of warfare is the destruction of an encircling army and the retreat of a retreating army. Well, consider that Yamada-Sena's probability bias is like being in the same situation as both of these. Well, it's nasty, but she still didn't seem to realize how abnormal it was. That's from the moment you're born with an ogre, all hours of the day, you know? That is also the moment she said that, the expression on her face was that of a happy demon, and it was obvious that she had a strange air about her. It was so out of place that even an ordinary person who was not familiar with such signs would have felt a chill. Naturally, this was communicated to the women in the vicinity, and some of them even tried to flee the scene in a panic, their faces twitching, but the next moment, the presence dissipated like a lie. Although she wondered at the suddenness of the situation, she soon regained her composure, which was due to the general lack of sense of danger. It was the 2 slices of cake that were placed in front of her that instantly dispersed the thick murderous spirit of Shunka. As Shunka looked at him with twinkling eyes, Nejian heartlessly shook his head in a small gesture. That's why I want to see what this Yamada-Sena guy is like. I see. That's someone I'd really like to slay. There were several empty pitchers lying in front of Shunka, who was blue and teary-eyed and looked as if she was about to rebel. The scene resembled a table full of businessmen who had come to a beer garden. Listen to what people are saying. I said I want to see it. So, you'll leave me to slay Yamada-Sena? Shunka, who was on the verge of a breakdown after eating a total of 3 pieces of cake that she hated, grinned. But unlike the last time, she didn't release a killing intent. That's why I'm telling you not to slash. Haha, forget it. Instead, keep your neck barrel properly maintained. Of course. Oh, so what do you do after you slay Yamada-Sena? Yes. I know my father won't think twice about sending me away because of this. If you misbehave again, I will inform my disciples to refuse to buy or receive mail orders. What the hell? Nejian immediately gave up and held up 2 fingers. It meant that he wanted her to order 2 tower stands of cake, and that was the moment he gave in to his daughter's threat. So, what do you think of that princess's technique? Yes, it is. For that age, I think it's okay. Shunka gulped at the cake that was slowly being presented to her. If she answered incorrectly, she would have to eat it again. Her body began to tremble slightly. It's a bit like your father's, but more refined, less lean. And the cake, which was being placed in front of Shunka, was quickly removed and placed in Nejian's mouth. Shunka heaved a big, sweaty sigh of relief. It's definitely a skill that's been honed and passed down over the years. Damn, does that mean there are more masters on the other side than that princess? In other words, that was what Nejian, her father, wanted. That's right. If that princess is at that level at her young age, there must be a lot of monsters over there. It's also cuckoo. I'm very, very excited. A father and daughter with 2 scary smiles on their faces. It was inappropriate for the occasion, and in fact, it stood out so much that the female customers were turned off by it, but Shunka was insensitive by nature, and Nejian was absorbed in the cake, so it didn't matter.